those who gave birth this year to their first child, we celebrate with you.
To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you.
To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stains, we appreciate you.
To those experiencing loss through miscarriage, failed adoption, or running away, we mourn with you.
To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes, tears, and disappointment, we walk with you.
Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make this harder than it is.
To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you.
To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you.
To those who have disappointment, heartache, and distance with your children, we sit with you.
To those who lost their mothers this year, we grieve with you.
To those who lived through driving tests, medical tests, and overall testing of motherhood, we are better for having you in our midst.
To those who step-parent, we walk with you on these complex paths.
To those who have emptier nests this upcoming year, we grieve with you and rejoice with you. It's great.
And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you.
Happy Mother's Day.
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 Come on, let's give it up for all the moms. Man, what a great day to celebrate moms in Jesus. As I said earlier, my name is Jacob. It's such an honor to have you. If you're joining us online, we just say welcome to you. So good to be in the house with each and every single one of you. Can we just admit one thing? Raising kids is really hard. We talk a lot about the blessing of kids, and we talk a lot about how joyful they are and all of those things, all of which is true. But raising kids is really difficult. It's full of distractions, anxiety, stress, time management, and it's really expensive. See, raising kids is really hard because, in truth, relationships are hard. And so I'm going to use the term mom throughout the course of this message, but maybe you're in the room and you're not a mom. That's okay. Anywhere that I input mom, these are relationship principles that will apply to your life in some sort of a way that will give you the ability to have deeper, more meaningful relationships, because being a great mom is really just about a great relationship. And relationships are hard. You know, in fact, preparing for a Mother's Day message is one of the most difficult Sundays that I preach every single year. And so I'm having a conversation with my wife, Kristen, about the difficulty of Mother's Day. And I'm kind of poking at her about how maybe she should be the lead communicator on Mother's Day. And if you know my wife at all, she gave me this look that told me where I could go in that moment. But she also told me it's not that hard. It's really easy. She said, you just preached the story of Mary and Martha, and it contains everything that moms need to hear in today's time. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump in. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for this opportunity to gather and to be in your presence. God, I pray that we have eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to receive the power and the fullness of your word. It's in Christ's mighty name we pray, and everybody said. We see this story in Luke chapter 10, picking up at verse 38. It says this: as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted. Everybody say distracted. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered. Listen, if Jesus says your name twice, you better open your ears and pay attention. It's kind of like when your mama says your name twice. You know you're about to be in trouble. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered. You are worried, everybody say worried, and upset, everybody say upset. I want you to see this correlation. Distraction leads to worry and upset. When we're distracted, we end up worried and upset. You're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Or indeed, only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. I love this story because it highlights a really important concept for all of our lives, and this is the conversation we're going to have today. Making a good decision isn't always the best decision. I remember when I got out of law school, and when you get out of law school, you then have to take this test called a bar exam if you want to actually be a lawyer. And so you're out and you're studying for the bar exam, and there's a multiple choice section to the bar exam. And as you begin studying for the bar exam, one of the principles that they teach you is that the objective isn't to choose the correct answer, it's to choose the best answer. Now, this is contrary to every test-taking principle that you've ever had in your life, right? When you get a multiple choice test, there's supposed to be A, B, C, and D. 1 is right and 3 are wrong. And I just picked the correct answer out of the 4. But when you sit down for the bar exam, A might be correct, and B might be correct, and C might be correct, and D might be correct, and I then have to analyze which one is most correct. Or A might be wrong, and B might be wrong, and C might be wrong, and D might be wrong, and you have to analyze the best answer, which one is least wrong. In our individual lives, the same principle applies. Making a good decision isn't always the best decision. We have to pick the best answer that we can pick, not just the right one. We see a stark contrast between Martha and Mary, and everyone in this room has felt this pull at some time or another. See, neither Martha nor Mary makes a wrong decision, but one makes a better decision. Martha, she's clearly a worker. She's planning, organizing. She's concerned with making this meal for Jesus and his disciples. She takes her job serious, and by all accounts is really good at it. And then there's Mary. And the passage tells us that she's sitting and listening. Martha's working her tail off, and Mary is sitting and listening. Now, this is reminiscent of all of our families, right? We all have the person in our family that works their tail off. They get everything ready, they prepare, they're organized, they put in the work, and then we all have that one uncle. See, I have that one uncle in my family, and I'll let him remain nameless, but that one uncle in my family was such a pro at being a bum growing up that it's not as though he showed up 5 minutes before the meal was ready. He showed up 5 minutes after the meal started. The line had already died down. He didn't have to wait for anybody. He didn't have to small talk with anybody. He walked in, grabbed a plate, and began to fill it up. And I don't know how he had such a magical instinct about him, but every single meal, my entire childhood, he showed up 5 minutes after the food was ready. So you've got Martha who's getting everything ready. Then you've got Mary that's just sitting and listening in this moment. Martha is not wrong, but that doesn't mean she made the best choice. And being a mom is a constant battle of making the best decision, not the right one. Now, this sounds like a really impossible task, but I want you to leave encouraged today. So we've got 4 principles we're gonna run through in this conversation really quick that I believe will help each and every one of us be better in our relationships. The first one is this: avoid the distraction of good. The text says that Martha was distracted. And distractions don't always cause us to make bad choices, but they often keep us from the best choice. You ever find yourself doing something good, preparing, planning, but then on the backside you realize that you missed what mattered most? The conversation, the engagement, the relationship, the thing that will extend beyond the meal and be real and lasting in your life. You know, motherhood's full of distractions. Seems like distractions come in seasons as a mom. And as we were getting ready to dedicate these children and we were meeting with them in this room off the lobby, it's like I saw all of these little babies, and all I could think about was how sweet they are and how much they sleep. I forget how much babies sleep. And then my wife reminded me that whenever they get out of the stage of sleeping all the time, they cry a lot. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Y'all gonna have to get with me today, okay? I know. Like, this is 11 o'clock. This is supposed to be my jive joint, all right? Come on now. Y'all know what I'm talking about? The crying stage. Now listen, I know some of you had perfect kids that didn't cry. The rest of us have real lives. Okay? The rest of us hit this phase where your kid cried a lot and you didn't know why your kid was crying, and you would look at your kid in the middle of the night and think, why can't you talk? You're 3 months old. Like, get with it here. I need you to communicate with me. Help me out. I'm trying to help you. You help me, right? Now, one of the principles that I often teach young couples, especially if they're having their first kid and they ask me for counsel, is this: don't make major life decisions in the crying phase. Because you're distracted in the crying phase. And I know you shouldn't do that, because it's exactly what Kristen and I did. See, our youngest son is 6. This church turns 6 in October. We made a major life decision in the midst of a crying stage, in the midst of what can feel like distraction. Listen, this was a great decision, don't get me wrong. But the principle is, whenever we're distracted by something good, we often miss out on what is best. Martha is distracted by what is good, making preparation, but she missed out on what is best, sitting and listening to Jesus. You know, there are lots of distractions, not just crying. Ego can be a distraction. Pride can be a distraction. Anxiety can be a distraction. Or how about this one? How about an unwillingness to say no, so you constantly find yourself too busy, which leads to distracted. It's important that we understand it, because distractions prevent us from sitting and listening, both of which are tools in great decision making. If you want to make great decisions, you have to be willing to sit and to listen. So can I just give you some freedom, Mom? Can I just help you a little bit of hope? It's okay to pause. It's okay to rest. It's okay to withdraw as Jesus would withdraw in his life to reconnect spiritually. Let me put it in practical terms. It's okay to leave the dishes in the sink. It's okay that the carpet isn't vacuumed perfectly. It's okay that your kids don't wear matching clothes to school on Monday. They gonna be all right. Don't be distracted by what is good, clean dishes, clean floors, perfectly matching kids, and miss out on what is great, sitting and listening. Avoid the distraction of good. The second thing is this: stop seeking perfection. What was Martha distracted by? Her preparations, and undoubtedly her desire that her preparations be as perfect as they could be. And I can just imagine Martha, right? Every detail has to be just right. And in those moments, we think we are focused, but often we've actually lost focus. Why? Because we now have tunnel vision. And when we have tunnel vision, we're no longer taking in all of the information. If all I want to do is fix one thing, get one thing right, get the meal right in this case, I might miss a greater opportunity because I'm fixated on making one thing perfect. I miss the opportunity to make 10 things great. And perfection is a myth, and we hear that, but I want to expound on it just a bit. Perfection is a myth because my perfection isn't your perfection. Not just because it's unattainable, but because my perfection isn't your perfection. You ever see photos of somebody or been with somebody and they pick out their wedding dress? Oftentimes they're holding a sign that says like the perfect one, or I found the perfect one, I made the perfect choice. when they picked out this wedding dress. And for many people, it's like they dreamed about, they're going to find the perfect dress. It's going to be the dead on, it's going to be the best dress, most beautiful dress, best fitting dress the world has ever seen. And at the end of weddings, I have yet to have a bride come up to me and say, you know what? That dress I picked out just wasn't the right one for today. The feeling is that that dress was perfect. Now, if perfection was the same for everyone, then wouldn't we all wear the same wedding dress? Wouldn't it be the same shape, size, color, length, flow, form, fit, beading, lace, function? But perfection to me isn't perfection to you, so I don't get caught up in this pursuit of perfection, trying to please everyone around me, because in doing so, I'll never please them, because we don't wear the same size, and we aren't the same shape. And we don't have the same skin tone, and we don't have the same style. And there is value in the uniqueness of the way that God has made you. And when you learn to embrace it, no longer are you worried about being perfect to the world around you. Stop seeking perfection. And number 3, stop comparing. Martha is comparing herself to Mary, and she calls on Jesus to straighten Mary out. Like, put yourself on the scene here, right? We have 2 sisters, and Jesus is rolling into town, and it's not as though they had, text messaging available. So it's probably some pretty limited notice that Jesus is on his way. So Martha goes into overdrive. She's cleaning, she's preparing, she's getting the ingredients, she's making the menu, she's making the best dishes she can possibly make. She's putting in all the work, she's sweating, she knows it's gonna be the best meal that's ever been presented in this moment. And she looks out and she sees her sister Mary sitting and listening to Jesus, and she immediately goes, why does she get to do that, but I have to do this? Why is it that she gets this benefit and I receive this work in this moment? So she calls on Jesus. I love it. She's like, Jesus. Mary's not doing the right thing. She's not focused. She's not helping. She's not preparing. She's not planning. She's not cooking. She's a bum. And I want you to tell her that she has to get in here to help me. But notice how Jesus rarely, if ever, took the side of the person requesting it. Notice how when someone goes to tell on somebody else to Jesus, Jesus is never like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna get my belt off and they're gonna get a whooping. Don't you worry about this. See, rarely can you be the one forcing the comparison and be right. So stop comparing yourself to other people. Because when you compare yourself to other people and you force that comparison, it doesn't put you in a spot to be right. And motherhood may be the ground of most comparison in the world today. I look at it like this. Have you ever prayed about something so hard and so long you weren't sure that it would ever come to pass? But then when it does, rather than rejoice that God gave it to you, you convince yourself you're screwing it up? Couldn't we tag that with welcome to motherhood? Like you prayed for, you believed for, you fought for, you sought for this kid, and then they hand that first child to you at the hospital, and they shoo you out the door, and you look around and go, now what? What do I do now? In this moment, I'm not qualified for this. I'm not capable of this in this moment. This feeling leads us to compare ourselves to others. How are they doing it? What are they doing to get it so right? What have they figured out that I haven't yet figured out? Why is everything so good in their life and not in mine? Martha's looking at Mary and she's like, why do I have to do all the work? And she gets all of the benefit. I was really fortunate growing up because I have a really great mom. But she wasn't perfect. And I want to set some of you moms free. I don't remember the imperfections of my mother. I don't remember the missteps. when she would yell and scream at me. I don't remember that. I don't remember when she would challenge me. I don't remember. No, here's the truth. I don't remember the imperfections. I don't remember the missteps. I remember the right steps. I remember when she would pick me up when I was down. I remember when I knew she was praying for me, even though I didn't deserve the prayers because of the fool I was being. I don't remember the missteps, and neither will your kids. They're going to remember the moments that really genuinely matter. So don't compare yourself to everyone else. Trust your gut. Trust your ability. And you say like, yeah, but everybody else has it figured out. You know, I'm 37 years old. But in my lifetime, due to professional circumstances, I've had the opportunity to sit across the desk from people that were in problematic situations on a daily basis. And these are people that when you look at their life, you think it's perfect. And you think they have it all figured out. You think they have all the money and they've got all the looks and all the clothes and all the houses and all the cars and all the relationships, and their Instagram is so dadgum filtered up, picture perfect. You just wonder if you could ever achieve what they've achieved in their life. And can I tell you, every single one of them were messed up. They had problems, they had issues, they had struggles that they were not telegraphing to the world. And I'm not belittling any of them. I'm simply acknowledging here publicly for all of us that we all got problems. None of us are perfect. So why would I compare myself to another imperfect person, another imperfect situation? We stop comparing ourselves, and it's so hard to do. So I want you to hear this truth. If you don't hear anything else, moms, hear this. You are chosen. You're chosen to be mom for your child in this moment. The person that you have this tendency to compare yourself to wasn't chosen by a perfect God to be the mom to your child in this moment. You were. Because God believes in you, because God has placed in you every single thing you need to successfully raise the gift He has given you, which is life in the child that you have in front of you. You are chosen. Deuteronomy 31:8 reminds us of this truth. The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. So when you acknowledge that you're chosen, what you're acknowledging is that God has been in this moment before you and He knows how to lead you. This passage in Deuteronomy, it's important that we get a little bit of context for it. See, Moses is in charge of God's people, but in this moment, he's putting Joshua in charge. It's a generational transfer that is occurring. Parenting a child is a generational transfer. And as Moses is transferring authority to Joshua and telling him that he will now be in charge and will have pressure on him, Moses is reminding Joshua of the powerful truth that the Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. You are chosen. Don't compare yourself to someone else. They weren't chosen to be mom to your kid. You were. John 15:16 says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. Part of the fruit that you bear in your life is found in your kids. And Jesus says, no, I chose you. I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit. And you hear that, I'm chosen. And it can feel like, oh yeah, that's good. It's good to be chosen. But you know, it's not easy to be chosen. It's actually an uncomfortable feeling. Like, man, God chose me, but I'm not capable of that. I'm not even good at that. I'm not qualified for that. So we rest in the promise of God that He went before us, that He chose us, that he's equipped us. And very last thing is this: position yourself correctly. Man, Martha's getting it. She's crushing it. She's doing all the work. But she wasn't positioned correctly for the best choice. See, at the feet of Jesus, Mary is sitting and listening. And in historical context, at the feet of Jesus was a place reserved for disciples. Mary goes and sits down among the disciples to be discipled by Jesus. See, sitting and listening makes disciples, and allowing people to sit and listen makes disciples. Mary isn't better than Martha. Mary doesn't have it all figured out, but Mary positioned herself correctly at the feet of Jesus, because at the feet of Jesus, she's sitting and listening. She's being made into a disciple. See, we read this passage and there are many takeaways from it, but you know what this is really a story of? It's a story of discipleship. Plain and simple. It's Jesus discipling people in this moment. They're sitting and listening and learning and growing from Jesus. And so, moms, understand this truth. If you disciple your kids, you've won. You're like, oh, I'm not qualified to do that. Yeah, sit and listen and allow them to sit and listen. There's power in conversation and communication because it is the foundation of real relationship. You know, your kids fill out these like Mom's Day things at school where they write like all these facts about mom and call my oldest, he's in 4th grade, and we got his back this week. And it's always funny to me because he always puts that Kristen's favorite thing to do is sleep. Makes me laugh. But one of the questions was something like, I don't remember it exactly, but something like, what do you and your mom like to do with each other? And he put talk. And I was like, dang, that's it. She won. That's it. You can make a whole lot of bad decisions and you can get a whole lot of things right, but if you sit and position yourself correctly to listen and to sit and allow your kids to listen to you, you have won the day, because that is how disciples are made. Position at the feet of Jesus, talking and having conversation, not being caught up in tasks and outcomes and perfection and comparison and things that need to get done. No, just sitting and listening and talking and conversing and being there one for another. It's at the feet of another person that Jesus illustrates an extremely powerful truth. We find it in John 13. I'm just going to summarize it. But one of the last acts before crucifixion that Jesus performs is to wash the feet of his disciples. As he's doing this, he literally says to them, you will not understand, because the act is considered so lowly that it was reserved only for a servant. And Jesus was the last person that should have been washing someone else's feet. But he chooses to serve rather than lead in this moment. It's a lowly act that the world looked at and said, why would you be doing that? Can I tell you, motherhood is full of lowly acts that make you wonder why you're having to do them and experience it. But notice what Jesus says. In verse 15 of John 13, he says this to his disciples after he's washed their feet. He says, I have set an example for you. Moms, when you sit and listen and you allow your kids to sit and listen, you know what you're doing? Setting an example for them. Setting an example to a life of fulfilled relationship. At the feet of Jesus, you'll set the ultimate example. At the feet of Jesus is a place of rest. And correct position brings rest, and the fatigue and the constant stress begins to fade just a little bit. So I'll say it like this. You can't do it alone, so do it at the feet of Jesus. This story is just one of discipleship. And Jesus points out this powerful truth. Martha's like, hey, Mary's not doing the right thing, and she's not helping. She's not participating in the way that I need her to participate. She's not doing what I need her to do. And Jesus says, Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. When you choose to sit at the feet of Jesus with your kids, on behalf of your kids, you're setting an example that will not be taken from you. A moment at the feet of Jesus will never be taken from you. A moment at the feet of Jesus on behalf of your kids will never be taken from you. A moment sitting at the feet of Jesus with your kids will never be taken from you. And that's a life-giving hope that we get to walk in, that we get to trust. And so motherhood often feels like a test. And it often feels like a test where you're looking at a whole bunch of right answers and you're trying to decide which one is best. That's good, which one is best in this moment? So it takes me back to Sunday school. And some of you are like, what is Sunday school? Sunday school is this old school thing we used to do back in church that was before church. You had church before church. You went to church twice on Sunday morning. Then you had to come back on Sunday night and you had to do it again, right? Because we were heathens and we didn't get enough Jesus the first time, right? Like, it took 7 hours to get the same amount of Jesus we try to reproduce in 45 minutes here. You know what I'm saying? Sunday school was church before church. And so if you were in church, in Sunday school, oftentimes the Sunday school teacher would ask questions. Okay, so what you learned if you went to church every single week like I did is the answer in Sunday school is always Jesus. Like, I don't care what they ask. Like, right? This is like Jeopardy speed round, baby. Hand up. I know the answer, Jesus. Guaranteed it's Jesus, right? Like, I think about it like, who can wash away my sins? Jesus. Who can part the sea? Jesus. Who can make a mountain fall flat? Jesus. Right? Who can help me win my basketball game tomorrow? Jesus. Who can make my mom stop yelling at me? Jesus. See, because if your teacher disagreed with you, they were a heretic and didn't get to teach Sunday school anymore. Just Jesus, right? When you get to a test and it feels like there's a whole lot of good answers, can I challenge you to run to the one that's just Jesus? Because it's always the right answer. Jesus is always the right answer. See, the best choice is always Jesus, because the best choice is always discipling your kids. And if you show them the way to Jesus, I can promise you, Jesus will one day say to you, well done, my good and faithful. I'm going to end with this. Moms, you're doing great. You're doing so much better than you think you are. I see it in your kids. I see it in the fruit that their lives are already producing in this place. You are crushing it because you are chosen for this task. So hear this. You've got this. And we're so honored to have you in our midst. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your might and for your power. And God, we pray that you just pour out blessing upon blessing on each and every mother in this place. God, we're so thankful for you, for your forgiveness, for your might, for your power. We're thankful that you've chosen moms to put in our life to equip us to fulfill your purpose. It's in the mighty name of Jesus we pray. And everybody said a great big